Saints' latest championship fixture saw them travel to our favourite UK city, built on a rich maritime history, beginning with the letter P, Plymouth. The score eventually finishing 2-1 to us. Glen, what did you make of the 90 minutes? A cliche game of two halves?
It was a little bit. The first half was kind of generally poor, I thought, and Russell Martin said as much after the game that there wasn't enough intensity in our attacking play. I didn't think our defending was too bad. I think we'd learnt a few lessons from the Norwich game, and the centre backs in particular were definitely being slightly more aggressive whenever the ball got up to the forwards. But our attacking play, we just seemed to be, passing it around for the sake of it, and there didn't seem to be a lot going on. There was a few mistakes as well. Having said that, we still should have worked the goalkeeper more in the first half. Nathan Teller had one really good chance where he kind of scuffed it after the ball got played across to him a couple of times. But yeah, nothing much happened in the first half. Plymouth didn't threaten much, and Shay Charles got that booking, which was the highlight of the first half for me, where he's getting his shirt pulled off his back, so his arms go up in the air, the ball hits it, and he gets booked. It's just stunning refereeing. And I'm sure we'll probably get onto the referee later. Second half, we obviously, Russell Martin obviously said something at half time, which made everyone come out with a little bit more intent. Nearly scored straight away through a dozy, and then did score through Teller. Good goal, good finished. And there's that old cliche about you're never more vulnerable when you've than when you've just scored, because one slip from Ryan Manning, and that was unfortunate, but we still could have done a hell of a lot more to prevent that goal. No one picking up the runners, and the guy scores from virtually in front of the goalkeeper, because just no one's doing their job. I'll give Manning a bit of a pass on that, because anyone can slip at any moment, but the other guys have to do better there. After that, again, it was a bit like the Sheffield Wednesday game, where you kind of think, yeah, we're going to have chances. I mean, Stewie at the bar, and we had that free kick from Armstrong that the keeper made a really good save from. Yeah, and there was always this feeling Plymouth hadn't really done anything, but they, I thought they were going to give that penalty, and then you see the replay of it and realise it's a horrible dive, and it should be a 3-game ban, but obviously that doesn't happen. Apparently, he's known for it. If you have it, I did a bit of research after the game to see if he'd been called for it before, and if you just type in Hardy dive, there's loads of fans from loads of other teams going back a bit. So apparently he always does it. And yeah, last 97th minute, whatever it was, we get the winning goal. I was going to say Adams couldn't miss, but he's missed from closer than that before. But it was, it was. I thought it was a deserved win overall. If you look at the highlights, really Argyle didn't really do that much. They had a few openings, after they pitched the ball off us high up, or even on the break, and they didn't seem to have the quality, apart from the one goal that they did score, to play the right pass. Really disappointed in a good way in Barley Mumba on the left wing, because he was terrible. He was one that was possibly going to cause us a lot of problems, but he had a terrible game. But whether it was because he was playing, Walker Peters, okay, he didn't cover himself in glory on their goal, but he had a pretty decent game other than that, and kept him pretty quiet. So yeah, it was a decent all-round performance, and though we left it late, I thought it was a deserved win in the end.
Yeah. A bit like Glen, Steve, Russell Martin said after the game, I think that he felt Saints deserved to win overall as well. So would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. That second half, we were the side making the running, and let's be honest, the only keeper that's actually been forced into making any sort of a save, pretty much in the whole game, was theirs. So yeah, I mean, from what I've read of Plymouth comments, most of them were fairly sort of pragmatic and said, yeah, we probably Saints probably edged it, but I think Plymouth on that showing they're not going to be in any danger at the bottom end of the table. I wouldn't have thought. They were fine, but just lacked a little bit of cutting edge. I don't know whether it was particularly big game for them, and therefore they just didn't quite make the right decisions. I mean, there were 2 or 3 occasions where they got into really good positions in the first half. I mean, one thing that we do that I'm still a little bit baffled by is we defend really narrow, even on the side of the pitch where the ball is. So the fullback is rarely outside of the sort of width of the penalty area, and that gives teams so much space to put balls into the box.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one that came in where I think the ball was just bad, and it was probably half a yard behind the striker, and he had to then take a touch and try and turn, and by then you're always going to be getting crowded out. But there were a couple, I think, where they worked their way into the box and then they managed to block their own shot. So you just had players in getting in each other's way, getting in the wrong positions, and just didn't seem to be a huge amount of synergy between them, which was odd, given that this is largely the same team that got them promoted. So yeah, I think ultimately you probably just put that down to us being vaguely competent for once. It seems strange for us to describe our defending as such, but yeah, I mean we were kind of fine. I thought while you're always worried, given what we've seen over the past couple of years, when we're running back towards our own goal and the opposition's running at us and the ball gets played wide and the guy's in loads of space, you're always absolutely terrified naturally. But actually it kind of felt a little bit different here, because after the first 5 minutes, where they had 2 or 3 good balls into the box where either there was a desperate clearance or someone managed to get a block in, after that we kind of seemed to get a handle on it and looked relatively composed. So I mean, I wonder whether that's a positive sign for the future. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can only beat what's in front of you. And second half, we were, as I say, comfortably the better side, made all the chances, and but some better finishing would have won it much earlier and by a wider margin, I suspect.
Yeah. Alfie, 2 weeks ago, it felt like we had an abundance of midfielders. Suddenly, by yesterday, with 4 of them either sold or out injured, we were in a slightly different situation. It obviously meant Russell Martin had to tweak that a little bit. So what did you make of the Shea Charles? Obviously, him making his first league start. He got Sky Player of the Match, Stuart Armstrong, Adam Armstrong. What did you make of that trio?
Yeah, well, if you told me a year ago that you'd have a midfield partnership of Adam Armstrong and Stuart Armstrong, I would have... I'd been very surprised, to say the least.
Terrified.
But, yeah, absolutely. But, like I say, Shea Charles was really good. He was really impressive against Norwich, and he deserved this start. Not that there was much choice. I think they found out that Will was not going to be available, obviously, last weekend. But Charlie Alcaraz was available up until Wednesday afternoon, and then they had the scan Thursday, and he was ruled out. So it left him in a bit of a pickle, with Romeo Lavia and Ward-Prowse going as well. Well, I knew that Adam Armstrong would be the obvious choice. I think people were saying that looking at the 11, it would be a 4-4-2, but he's already spoken about Adam Armstrong playing in the 10, playing in the 8, whatever you want to call it. And let's be fair, he did unbelievably well, didn't he? I think he had 4 shots, most any Saints player, tied with Nathan Teller, 4 chances created, same with Nathan Teller. 6 or 7 progressive carries in the middle of the park, which is all he's had all season. He hadn't actually made one before yesterday. I just thought he was excellent. Defensive duels in both boxes, and then the 90th minute tackle, obviously, as well, to save the 2 points. And, playing in the James Ward-Prowse role, he's stepped up to a free kick, and I thought he'd hit one as good as Ward-Prowse for a little while. But Connor Hazard made an unbelievable save. It was unbelievable, yeah. But, look, it's not
worth noting how bad their wall was for that, by the way.
Yeah, true.
It wasn't really a wall, was it?
Yeah. But with the midfield options available, I think that Stuart Armstrong, Shea Charles and Adam Armstrong, they've helped Russ Martin out there massively. I'd like to think that there'll be Flynn Downs in by next weekend, and maybe we'll see Flynn play slightly further forward and maybe Armour on the wing or up front, depending on what happens with Adams again. But yeah.
Yeah, I saw someone say during the week maybe he's waiting behind Matt Holland in the medical room for a medical. So that'll mean one to lots of the Saints fans that remember that. But just briefly, Alfie, on Stuart Armstrong, because I think it was maybe the press conference you were at where Russell Martin said, I think, quote, I'm paraphrasing here, sorry, but he's never seen Stuart Armstrong as a winger. He's always seen him as a centre midfielder. So it already feels like he's kind of made his mind up that that's his best position anyway.
And I think he was saying that, that's what Stewie wants as well. Obviously Russell's seen him play when he was at Rangers, when Stuart was obviously at Celtic, and they played together for Scotland, and he'd always been a centre midfielder then. So that's how he'd known that. And I think what I gathered from what Russell was saying is that Stu, one of the reasons he felt like he probably wanted to leave the club this summer was to pursue this midfield role, this centre midfield role. And Russell was all behind it. And, I I didn't necessarily think it was the right thing at first. I always saw him more of a winger as well. I don't know what you, Glenn and Steve, think.
Well, it was a Ralph thing, wasn't it? Yeah, to fit him into the 4-2-2.
Yeah.
He couldn't play centre midfield in a 2. He's just not disciplined enough to do that. So they made him the de facto right winger. And after a while, he did a really good job there. And that's kind of where he's played for us. Because was Ralph the manager when we signed him? I'll lose track.
I think Mark Hughes was here.
Mark Hughes probably was, yeah. But when
because
it was that summer, wasn't it?
Yeah,
because he scored at Fulham, didn't he? Which was Hughes's last away game where he got a volley.
So I know when he played for Celtic, they always kind of played a midfield 3, and he played to the left hand side of in the centre sort of thing, which is much the same as what he's doing now. So no, I think he ended up there simply because Ralph wanted to shoehorn players into the 4-2-2 formation.
Yeah, and Steve, another late goal, as we've obviously said, to win it. I mean, so far this season now in 3 games, that's 87th minute winner, Sheffield Wednesday, the 97th minute penalty against Norwich, and then 94th minute against Plymouth. It's a good sign, I suppose, for the season ahead that this team's keeping going right to the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those where the players that we've got, because they're coming down from the Premier League, they should naturally be better players than the guys that they're coming up against week in, week out. And I think as a result, you will eventually grind these teams down. That's generally what we're finding. Like Wednesday, they sat in deep and they were happy to concede possession for as long as we were happy to have it. Plymouth slightly less so. They were a little bit more proactive, but yeah, it's a similar thing where you've just got to be patient. And fortunately, we have been, and we've not kind of decided. Like the Norwich game, it would have been very easy for us to just start lumping the ball into the box in that injury time period. But no, we know what works best for us, and we kept at it, because at the end of the day, there's no point in us lumping the ball in the box for. I mean, what have we got at best? A 5'10" centre forward. I mean, Adams is decent in the air, but you can't have him up against 2 massive centre backs on his own. Yeah, sure, he might beat them once in a while, but balance of probability is not on your side there. So the fact that already the players have been drilled into this system of trusting we're going back to last season and the horrors of
trust the process.
I knew you were going to say
that. is the thing. But when you've got a process that people have actually seen working, then by all means do it. That's the key. The problem last season was that Ruben Sellers was coming out saying trust the process, and yet we're watching us lose every week. You
that was the process.
You can't place any trust in that. Whereas here we're already seeing results, and we're seeing late results where we're keeping going, and we have to use resources off the bench just like every other side, but the resources that we've got are making a difference, and they're not a huge step down if any at all. We've got a bit of depth in kind of key attacking positions, I think. It's just I think there's a little bit of a depth issue elsewhere on the pitch, but for the most part we've got options off the bench where we need to kind of force things a little bit. And I think certainly scoring late goals gives you confidence, and you always feel that you can go right to the end. And you look at how many goals Wrexham scoring late on, obviously they're constantly in the news, which is fairly tedious. But when they scored twice in injury time yesterday to get that ludicrous 5-5 draw, and they were doing it all season in the National League. When you've got better attacking resources than the opposition's defence, then eventually you will break through. You've just got to give it time and show a bit of patience and trust that it will fall for you eventually.
I don't know how scientific this is, but Ryan Manning did say to me at Hillsborough after they scored the late winner there that Russell Martin's teams do score late goals because if you dominate the ball 60-70% of the time, you have more energy than your opponents naturally. So I don't know how scientific that is, but
and that was one of the things Russell Martin said when he first came in, that it's easier to play football when you've got the ball. And you need less energy to do it. So I think certainly in the case of the Sheffield Wednesday game and the game against Plymouth, I definitely think that was the case. The Norwich game is slightly different, but but yeah, I think that we've definitely worn those teams down. So we were always the more likely to score in the last few minutes.
Yeah. Glenn, I'm going to ask you about Sam Amiyor in a minute, but briefly, just because I can see quite a few comments about this, Alfie, and there was quite a lot of noise, I think, around Twitter as well, I suppose, with Ramon Perot being fit again. Obviously, Ryan didn't cover himself in glory with the fourth goal, I think it was, at Norwich last week. Slipped yesterday. He's also got a couple of bookings and things like that. Do you feel like for him, it's just sort of maybe getting used to a bit of a new environment? There's, obviously the team's performing quite well, but I suppose in terms of maybe minor negatives, it's already, it feels like fans are maybe just starting to get a few question marks around him, and maybe it'll just take him a few games to get up to speed with the way the rest of the squad plays.
I don't know. Well, sorry, is that Glenn or me?
Yeah, for you, Alfie, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It's a game of opinions, but I don't necessarily agree. He's made a couple of mistakes, but I actually think that he's been one of the more involved players. If you look at it in terms of passes and touches, he's always on the ball. He's always making things happen. He's visibly organising people in front of him as well, because he understands the Russell Martin system. So yeah, I wouldn't be worried about him. I think he's a good player, and I think a couple of mistakes.
Yeah, perfect. All right. I think that hopefully covers off, because I see quite a few comments on that as well. So, Glenn, I wanted to talk to you about Sam. Again, there was lots of positives, and we've obviously covered off some of the players. We'll come to our player of the week in a minute. But it felt like, again, for him, a really bright 20-minute cameo. And I suppose the bigger question that I had was, 17 years old, in a game like that, it's 1-1, it's in the balance. Obviously, Sam Edozie had to go off. But does it sort of, again, reiterate how much confidence Russell Martin and the coaching staff have in him, that even though there's more experience on the bench, he's the first guy they bring on?
I think very much so. It says that exactly. They've obviously recognised there's a real talent there, and I've not seen a game yet, be it a friendly pre-season or the Carabao Cup game, or any time that he's come on and played any amount of time, where he hasn't been a very positive influence on things. It was him doing the run-in that won the corner, and taking players on and stuff like that. And I think it's excellent. There's a danger of too much too soon. Obviously, I don't want them to put him in the starting lineup yet. I mean, but I'm sure that if we rock up next week and Nathan Teller and Sam Edozie are injured, I'm sure he'll play. But I don't think they do that through choice at this particular moment in time. It's him or Musa Djenepo, isn't it? It's really no comparison. I think the kid's obviously got something, and it'll be interesting to see what happens if he gets really whacked by someone. But he's been kicked a couple of times in these games, and he just seems to get up. But he just it's slightly terrifying. Just look at that. I mean, he looks like he weighs about 7 stone. He's tiny. He really does look very slight. So hopefully he can stand up to the kicking that he'll inevitably get at some point. But no, I hope they keep using him in sort of like 20-minute injections off the bench, and because it certainly helps us. And it's another thing that in the last knock-ins of a game, to have a young kid come on the wing. I know they Plymouth substituted their fullback actually, but they had a new guy on. But normally that wouldn't be the case. So you'll be up against tired players. I think that's ideal for him at his age and this stage of his development. And long may it continue with him making the impact that he has so far.
Yeah, no, good stuff. All right. Well, just before we finish up with Alfie and doing the player of the week, I wasn't necessarily going to talk about it, but Glenn did bring it up, and I know you guys were talking about it a couple of weeks ago about refereeing, Steve, and obviously how quickly it would take for standards to sort of slip, and yellow cards that we were getting at Hillsborough. And then I obviously saw Bobby Madley's fantastic sending off the following week at Rotherham and things like that as well. I mean, what did you make of the ref, without going into loads of detail, because we won the game and I suppose we should look to move on, but just in terms of the sort of inconsistencies, I guess?
I think, ultimately, let's be fair. The big decisions he got right. He gave the dive, which I don't think. If you were watching live on TV, I think most people would just said, "Well, that's a penalty, isn't it?"
Yeah. And
it's only when you've seen it from a couple of angles, from kind of behind or in front, where you can clearly see there's no contact, and he's clearly tried to kind of initiate it. And I think, he's given us the free kick on the edge of the area where Armstrong pulls out that great save from their keeper. And to be honest, I think those are the two really big decisions. I don't think. You're never getting a shirt pull on Shay Charles in a month of Sundays. That one where he's got booked. And I think if he's not seen the shirt pull, then the only thing you're seeing is a very obvious deliberate handball. So I think,
and to be fair to him, he was kind of behind it. I mean, I know I'm sticking up for referees here, but that play was behind him. He was behind him. I thought,
yeah. I mean, as I say, I always sort of more than happy to pile in on certain referees when they are terrible, but I didn't really see anything from the guy yesterday to kick up a fuss about. The amount of time added on was probably right. Obviously, bearing in mind when we scored, there was probably at least a minute of celebrations.
Yeah.
So you're going beyond the already allotted amount to a certain extent anyway. So
they had to pick up all the bottles, didn't they, that have been thrown at Shay Adams? And
yeah, I mean, why would you go and celebrate in that corner?
I don't know. Last minute goal like that.
But each their own. But yeah, I mean, the ref was fine, I thought, and it's about time because we've had some very odd ones so far. But at the end of the day, as long as they're consistent throughout the game, I don't think most fans will have too many complaints. Obviously, you whinge at big decisions that are maybe 50-50 that go against you, but there weren't any obvious ones that I thought, even those sort of little break-up fouls that everyone always gets really annoyed about. He was fairly even-handed on them. Most of them he'd kind of let it flow for the most part, but let's be honest, both teams were kind of desperate to give the ball back to each other at times. It was especially the first half, it was quite a low quality first half. And actually, we probably could have done with the ref breaking it up a little bit more, some nonsense fouls to get us to settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, he was fine.
Perfect. All right. Well, before we do our player of the week, then, Alfie, one more sort of final question. Russell Martin afterwards also said about he's starting to feel, quote, that connection between the supporters and the team, and the connection between him and the supporters. Can you feel that as a journalist? You obviously go to lots of the games. You see him out the games, in the games. You starting to feel that connection as I don't want to say outsider looking in, because you're more than that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm in the press box, and I'm probably making a little bit more noise than I'm meant to be sometimes, because the games are exciting. The way they've gone in the last few weeks as well has been brilliant. But I think it all started with Reading, really. The reception that Russell Martin got at Reading, having not even kicked the ball in England, was just unbelievable. The 3,500 fans, whatever minute it was, singing E-I-E-I-O, which is a brilliant chant that we've got back as a result of relegation. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. The connection's 100% there, and he's a genuinely honest bloke. I think he gives good answers. He says what the fans want to hear, and I think he means it, which is a difference as well. There's no reason not to enjoy it. And he is somebody who's about connections, and he wants to, as I've mentioned before, Matt Gill is always there in his press conferences and his interviews for some reason, just stood there loitering sort of behind us. But he's getting him more involved now. Everyone's having a chat, and it's nice at the moment. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, in terms of player in the week, then, it feels like we've got Adam Armstrong in there. I'm with you, Alfie. I thought he was absolutely fantastic second half, both ends of the pitch. Shay Charles, it feels like we've got in, obviously based on it being his debut and doing a good performance. Is there anyone else that you guys want to nominate before we have a chat to Ben from the QPR podcast? Is it a two-horse race?
I think it's a two-horse race, really.
Yeah, if I was going to say anyone, I'd say Gavin Bazunu. Simply because he's had a decent game. He hasn't made any sort of mistake. He stood up well in the last couple of minutes when the ball was sort of flying into our box a few times. So if I was going to pick anyone else, it'd be him.
There we go. Brilliant. Right. So our players of the week are Shay Charles, Adam Armstrong, Gavin Bazunu. We'll get the social media post out, and you guys can vote over the next 24 hours to see who you'd like to get in.